For this month's Craft with 5 challenge, I'm going to be using scraps to make sketches 7 and 8 from Kendra's Card Challenge 22. Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. Today I'm going to be using this Wedding Days 6x6 pad. It's an older one, and I had some scraps left, so I thought it would be great to use with Kendra's Card Challenge 22 sketches 7 and 8. And I've got 2 off-white panels here that I have embossed with that embossing folder. So for the Craft with 5 challenge, if you don't know what it is a challenge I put together last year, and each month there are 5 different prompts, which can be a mixture just between themes and tools, products, things like that, but it's just a way to help us kind of step outside our normal box, maybe use some of those products or tools or ideas that we don't use very often. And there will be a playlist linked in the description box below for you where you can check out Melanie and Sarah, who do this collaboration along with me. So I had these strip scraps left over from I don't know what, and I thought they would be great for sketch 7. I chose sketch 7 and 8 because they are great to use with scraps, and they incorporate one of the items in the prompt list for this month. So the prompts are triangle, turquoise, embossing folder, flower, and scraps. So I'm using the scraps. The sketches include triangle pieces, so that was helpful. And I had these strips, and they're not the same width as what Kendra's sketch calls for, but I thought they would work. I can make them the same length. So real quick, if you don't know about Kendra's Card Challenges, it's a quarterly PDF workbook that Cards by Kendra puts together, which helps you take 6x6 sheets of pattern paper and turn them into 15 cards, like with having no pattern paper scraps left over. So it's a really fun challenge. And each, like, you could do all 15 cards at one time if you follow along with her cutting guides. You can cut down all the pieces at once, or you can do one sketch at a time. So that's what I'm doing today. Each sketch has the measurements on it, so you could make one sketch at a time. So here I talked about my strips being a different width than what the sketch called for, and I didn't think about that when I went to cut down these triangle pieces. I was just following along with Kendra's measurements and realized, oh wait, mine were thinner. So I had to recut those little triangles. And now we're going to go ahead and assemble. So when I'm assembling this sketch, I always kind of like to line up the vertical, like the top vertical piece and the right horizontal piece first, because they line up perpendicular to each other, kind of making a right angle. And so I kind of dry fit those and figure out where they're going to go and use that vertical piece to help me line up where that horizontal piece goes. And then I just kind of work my way around. And then once these pieces are down, I can add those little triangles, which are kind of what mimics the pinwheel. I think this one could also mimic a present, like a gift, if you wanted to make it, like turn it, well, I guess you could leave it horizontal too, but I was thinking turn it vertical and it kind of looks like a gift. You put a big bow in the center. And I did try to alternate my scraps so that I had 2 of the blue and then 2 of the wood grain. And then because I used the deboss side of the embossed pattern for the top side of my card, so this bottom side has like the embossed, so like the swirly pattern is kind of sticking up. So I added some wet glue in addition to my tape runner just to make sure that it's gonna hold with that extra unlevel surface, I guess. So I'm putting these little triangles in and making sure that the points kind of all point towards the middle. And then for my flower, I am going to be using a small flower punch from my stash and punching a flower from some of the scraps that I have. And then we'll add that to the center of the pinwheel. I wanted to have a small enough flower that you could still see the green, because I thought, well, the green triangles kind of also look like leaves for the flower, so it kind of you know, goes a couple different ways. So I will glue my flower down, and then I do bring in some white Love from Lizzie's circle peel-offs. I bring in one just to add a center to my flower there. I was trying to decide if I wanted to do anything else. And then for my sentiment, I have this little cut apart that says thank you. I am making all thank you cards today, and all of the cards are A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I just trimmed this down, and then I'm going to add a fishtail banner in the left side. So this is bringing in the turquoise. I originally was just going to count that kind of like light turquoise blue pattern paper as my turquoise, but then I found these and I thought, oh nope, here's a true turquoise, and it still coordinates. So I'm showing you that I've got the triangles, the turquoise, the embossing folders, the flowers, and the scraps. Getting it all included on that card. So I realized I forget to show you sketch 8 here, but I'm going to be moving on to the second card, and I'm starting with a white kind of card mat that's 4 by 5 1/4, and this is what I'm going to glue all of the little pieces, the triangles and strips to, and then I can add that to my card front. This is just easier for me. So I cut down a square, and again, I'm just using the measurements on the individual sketch. I will have Kenra's video and link to the PDF for you, also linked in the description box below, so if you don't have it or have never heard of it, you can check out those links to see more about it. But then to cut the triangles from the square piece, I just line up the points of 2 points of the square on my trimmer channel there, and then start my blade in the center and then work up and down, and that helps keep the corners from like bending and getting caught. So my original plan was to use my second embossed off-white panel in the center, like as the center strip there, but I realized that didn't really do a whole lot for me. I wanted to bring in some more depth to the card, so I decided to go with this wood grain strip, and it wasn't going to be long enough, which I don't think my embossed panel would have either, but so I just sliced it down the middle, and it will get covered once I add my embellishments in the middle of the card. So I'm going to glue the 2 triangle pieces down first, kind of anchor my corners there, and then I'm going to add just my tape runner adhesive, my adhesive gun. I'm going to use that to add adhesive to the rest of the card in the center there. That way I don't have to add adhesive to each individual strip. And I don't know, that just makes it easy, because then I can just put all the rest of the pieces down and then trim off the excess from the outer edges. So I opted to go with like 2 blues for the second strip, and then that wood grain for the center. I just liked the depth of color of the wood. And then I'm going to trim off all the overhanging pieces. And then because I didn't use my embossed piece as that strip in the middle, I kind of had to pivot, like Ross in Friends, if you know, you know. And I'm going to try and figure out how I can bring in that embossed panel into my card somehow, because I have to include something that I used an embossing folder on. So I decided to make it kind of like a mat for my focal point. So what I'm going to end up doing is taking another one of those turquoise square thank you cut aparts that I had. I cut that into a circle. I used dies to cut that into a circle, and then used some of the like brown wood grain to make a kind of a second matting layer, and then I did a scallop circle out of my embossed panel. So you don't really see a whole lot of the embossing, but you can still see some of it in the edges of the scallop. Add this down to my card base, and then I decided I felt like it needed a little something else, and I wanted to use some more of that embossed panel. So I decided to use the flower punch, a smaller flower punch this time, and I just punched 3 flowers, and I'm going to kind of scatter them around a little bit, and then with some of that turquoise cut off that I had left from my first card, I will make the turquoise the center of those flowers. And even those turquoise circles were tiny, I feel like they helped pull that turquoise throughout the card. And they added just that extra little bit of color pop that I think this card needed. I love the pastels, but it needed something bright to kind of... So now this card has my turquoise, triangles, scraps, embossing folder, and flowers. So I think we nailed all the prompts on the second card as well. After I made these first two cards, I did still have some scraps left over. So I did manage to make a second set of both sketches 7 and 8. This one is a little different, and I like how this one came out with more of like the darker wood. But then I did have to bring in, there's like 2 separate pieces here in the middle because this scrap was not quite wide enough. So this was scrap from something else that I had cut up from the pad. And then here is another version of sketch 7. This time I went with a craft colored card mat, still used the same kind of quilted swirly lines, embossing folder. And then as far as on this one, the turquoise, I just counted this kind of bluish as a turquoise, but here, because I thought it needed some more color, I did have some scraps left from what I trimmed off of these. And so I added those to 2 of the circles. So I got 4 cards from scraps using the 4 prompts or the 5 prompts from this month. Luckily, Kendra made it a little easy for me because she already had triangles incorporated in those 2 sketches. So that was something I didn't have to do. And then from those scraps that I showed you in the beginning, this is what I have left. So I will put that with the rest of the pad. And then I did punch 2 little flowers. So at least I got the bulk of those scraps used up, so I can, when I start working on that pad, I can not have to worry about those. But please be sure to check out that playlist linked in the description box below and see what the other participants made this month. Thank you guys so very much for your time today, and hope you all have a very crafty day.